Pruning tomatoes. There's a couple things you need to do for your tomato crop to help them avoid fungus, disease, etc. Normally, I don't do it. I just let them go. They produce lots of fruit and they go. This year I'm going to pay a little bit more attention and I'll walk you through a couple things real quick, so hold on. Okay, understand that every cubic yard of air has 50,000 to 200,000 mold spores in it. And basically what happens, you have this fungus spores, mold spores, disease spores. They blow through these tomato plants. They land on the leaves, and the leaves have moisture on them, and then that fungus can grow, and that's how this whole disease thing basically starts. So what you want is you want your leaves to dry out quickly. Number one, always water first thing in the morning. Always water down low. Don't water on your leaves. You don't want your plant wet overnight, if possible. And you want to open up the air circulation. That's a key to this. Anything that is growing to the interior, I basically want to remove. Anything that's down low near the ground, I want to remove up. And then, of course, the other rule are suckers. I'm not real big about suckers. If I see them, I'll cut them out. But it's not like I'm going to spend my time just searching and searching for suckers. Now, suckers, see if I can find one. Okay, see right there? See how there's a stem growing out of the middle of this plant right there? That's a sucker. And suckers will always grow out of the center of this joint. And that's what you want to remove. That's what people talk about removing suckers. My biggest concern really, though, are these interior growing stems that won't dry off. And a lot of times if you see yellow or diseased leaves, they're going to be interior leaves or they're going to be down low. You'll notice that. Now you see how much foliage I've taken off here and all along here. See all that? And I'm only halfway done. So I'm going in here, and anything that's interior that's not going to dry out or is clogging my airflow, I'm going to remove. Let's see here. What does this one look like? Let me give an example. I left my scissors inside. So I'm removing that. And I want to open this up. I want to be able to almost see through these plants. Down low, I want to take off any kind of leaves that are down low, period. All foliage down low comes off. All this low foliage, anything down here, this is all coming off. That's where a lot of disease will happen. And you can see how open I am down here. That's what I want to see. Very, very open. Now, a lot of people talk about single stalk tomatoes. That's fine. Everyone does their tomatoes their own way. But the biggest thing you can do, regardless of how you raise your tomatoes, is open up airflow. So, as an example, there's a perfect example. Look at that. That one's inside. It's down low. I'm going to find that on it. Seldom will you find those yellowing leaves out on this, diseased leaves out on this area. They're almost always going to be interior and low. So see how open I have this plant here? This plant is really open. That's almost where I want to be. Now this one might have a little disease actually on it. Might have curly top on it. But I'm going through here little by little, just sort of taking all this bottom off and opening up so I can see through there. So I'm just going through here, opening all this up, not taking off any flowers. Anything that's low is coming off. That will never mature into anything. Oh. That's off. That's out. That's out. That's out. It's getting late, but as you can see, I no longer have a fence. So today is the first day of our new fence install, and yes, I'm putting it on video little by little. but I just wanted to run out here and show you a little bit of the finished product. Now I'm not done completely because I really want to open all this stuff up. But I just want you to see how open all this is up under here. I want to get all that lower stuff off, and I wanted this to be nice and airy. Basically, the good leaves are up high and off to the side, everything that will get sun. This heavy populated middle area is what you want to get rid of and thin. That'll stay damp and shaded, cause your blight and fungus issues. All right, real quick, let's talk about some preventative measures that you can do. Preventative measure, what you can do is you can change the pH on the surface of your leaves. How do you do that? Well, one way to do it is to take baking soda, not baking powder, baking soda. And you take, I think it's 1 teaspoon per gallon. Shake it up, shake it up, shake it up. Maybe even put in a drop of like Dawn, or a drop or two of surfactant if you have surfactant laying around. Then what you're going to do is you're going to come by here and lightly spray all the leaf surfaces and let it dry. Just let it dry on there. You can do that once a week, maybe once every 2 weeks. And again, it'll change the pH. It's just like moss. Moss doesn't like to grow in a certain pH. Same thing with the funguses and mold and everything else. Next, if you do start to have some fungus issues or disease issues, hydrogen peroxide. So you can take hydrogen peroxide. I would say about half a cup into a gallon of water. And that is sort of a cleaning bath. It'll help kill the fungus that's actually on there. So you can come by, spray all your plants with this. Now, be careful with this. You don't want to come out here every day and do this. This is like once a week or once every 2 weeks type deal. But if you do have a fungus that's starting to attack your tomatoes, this is one solution. Now, there are other commercially available products that you can do. That's just 2 solutions that you might have around the house. It's just an easy way to do it. So, summarize. Suckers. Take off all your suckers. Number 2, open up the middle. Allow the airflow to get through. And think about the good leaves are the ones that are going to be around the outside and where the sun is going to hit and where the airflow is going to be. The bad leaves are the ones that are going to be on the middle. Now, I don't cut off anything that has a flower on it. I leave it, even if it's a sucker. That's just the way I am. I'm a sucker for tomatoes. But I don't go through here and spend enough time cutting every single sucker off. Look, there are a bunch of great farmers out there that do single stem tomatoes, that do all kinds of different methods. I want it easy. I plant them, but I've learned if I don't do this thin out method, that's when I start to have problems. But as you can see, now these, if you didn't watch the Humichar garden soil video I just posted up before this one, go watch that video. And you'll learn how I got these healthy plants producing all this fruit in about 7 weeks. The squash, I gotta show you my squash. This is incredible. And look at the squash. Good Lord. Oh, I'm gonna give a bunch to Barb. Look at that. Look at all the squash in here. That is just insane. I've got more squash that needs to get picked. Roughly 6 weeks old. And we did it with that Humichar super compost. That's what we're using for these soils. Now I'm a little concerned about all this rain we're having because I'm afraid. And I've got green peppers already. My green peppers, I've got big green peppers on almost every single plant. Morning. It's actually too early to be out here shooting. It's too dark and cloudy. I came out here really, since I don't have a fence around here anymore, I'm a little concerned about the deer coming in here. That's what I'm worried about. So I got all kinds of roses, flowers. Oh, I'm always protected by my fence. Well, my fence is down. So thank God they didn't make it in here. I can see already. Because if they made it in here, they would have attacked my peas. So what I did was, I'll put a link to this in the description. I'm going to link to everything I'm talking about product-wise, but I put my This normally is out front protecting my plants. Let me see if it goes off. I have it on night mode, so it might, yeah. See that? If you don't have one of those, I'm going to put a link to it. It's the only thing that works, period, to keep deer out 100%. It runs on 4 AA batteries. You hook up a garden hose to it, and any motion that comes by, boom, it goes off. And I'll tell you what, you can see where deer have gotten so scared that they've almost fallen down in the yard. That thing is great. Now it has a on, off, has a all the time mode or just night mode too. But leave it on night mode is what I suggest, because you'll be out cutting your grass and it'll scare the crap out of you. I love that deer sprayer. I'll put a link to it. The batteries last, gosh, a good 4 or 5 months usually. The only thing you got to do, I found, is just make sure you don't have any leaky connections, you know, on your hoses around, because you have to leave your hose on all the time. So one of the first things I want to do is want to give a shout out to, who was it, D. Blake. He put a comment on my last video about this garden, and he used the same compost method. He said, Doc, I got to say, a big shout out to you. What is it? I'll put the comment up. Something like, I'm using the same thing. He said, my raised beds are just going crazy. He said, my neighbor's like, what are you doing between your lawn and your garden? What are you doing differently? So big shout out to D. Blake. He's done the same thing, and it's worked for him well too. Lots of people have. They're talking about it. Okay, so I'm going to put up a piece of footage that I took last night with my phone, because it was too dark out here to shoot really with these cameras. And you'll see that there's sort of steam coming out of this hole, and this steam is from the actual process of digestion of this organic material. This is that super compost that we make up. Sounds like a wildlife refuge around here sometimes, all the geese flying around there. So what I'm doing today is, you really need to turn this to get oxygen inside of it. Microbes basically need moisture, they need food, and they need oxygen. So if your pile kind of stalls out on this super compost, it's not regular compost. We're not using any fertilizer in our gardens, we're just using this. I actually think this one pile actually kind of stalled out a little bit. I think it's actually too wet. I had watered it, and then we got all this rain, so it's kind of touchy. You don't want it dry, but you don't want it wet. I actually think that that's too wet right now. This organic matter, which is brown, will turn white. That's what you want to see. If it's really, really dry, add a little bit of moisture to it. If it gets too wet, just keep turning it and let it dry out until it activates. But that pile's not activating as fast as this one did. Now this one activated, this thing just fired up, got up to about 180 degrees within about 48 hours. This pile kind of stalled on me a bit. And I think because it's just gotten too wet, it feels actually a little bit muddy, and that's not what I want. So you just got to play with this a little bit again. Just keep turning it. You don't want it, it's just too moist right now. I can feel a little bit of heat in there, but not enough, not the way I want. Let's just summarize real quick. Number one, if you haven't watched the videos on this super compost that we use in this, because we're not using any fertilizers, we're just using this super compost on this garden. As far as your tomatoes go, lots of air, lots of space. Concentrate on the outside leaves, leave them alone, but attack the middle of it. Every so often, come out here, maybe every other week, just spray a light coat of the baking soda spray, 1 tablespoon per gallon of water. That'll raise the pH on the surface of your leaves. If you start to see a disease, then you're going to come out with the hydrogen peroxide. And the hydrogen peroxide, you're going to spray the entire plant. Upper leaves, lower leaves, stems, everything. Give it a bath. And you can even come out the next day and maybe even do it again just to kill that disease and fungus. Then leave it alone for a few days. Come back and put more of that baking soda on it. Again, it's just a way to extend it. Now, there's always a discussion about suckers and pruning them and indeterminate versus determinate tomatoes. I always plant indeterminate tomatoes. I'm not going to get into a real in-depth discussion about it, but basically determinate is we're going to produce all of our fruit at one time, and then that's it. The production is done. Indeterminate is more of a vine type plant where it just keeps growing and wanting to keep going. So there are a lot of people that don't even prune suckers on indeterminate, whereas on determinate they do prune it. It's just really weird how that all goes. So, but the main thing I've learned, you'll get tons of fruit if you do this. If you use this compost, open them up, just keep your eye on it for disease. Hit that subscribe button, which is there, I think. I can't remember where it is. I'm always looking backwards into the camera. Hit subscribe, and I'll show you what this fence looks like when it's done. Dot.